The Pyro arc on Mavuika is finally returning in the second half of version 6.6, and even after all this time, she's still one of the best characters in almost every scenario. She's the second strongest DPS, arguably the best Pyro sub-DPS, has the strongest nuke, the best exploration abilities, and the strongest claymore in the game, all packed into one character, which makes her pull value absolutely insane. In this guide, we'll cover her talents and new rotations. We then go over her updated best weapons, artifacts, teams, and constellations, and see how much value she actually brings to your account. Hello, welcome to Genshin Filter, your quick guide for everything Genshin. So let's get started! Mavuika is a 5-star Pyro Claymore user who ascends with crit damage, and her main playstyle is as an on-field DPS hypercarry in melt teams, which allows her to deal extremely high damage nukes that puts her as the second strongest DPS in the game, who can also be played in Overload and Vaporize teams, as well as being one of the best off-field sub-DPS in the game, making her an extremely strong and versatile unit. Her normal and charge attacks are standard Claymore hits and are basically irrelevant outside of her skill and burst state. Her elemental skill has both a press and hold version. Pressing it makes her enter the Night Soul Blessing state and creates a fire ring behind the active character, dealing wide AoE pyro damage. It hits hard, has great uptime, and applies enough pyro for most teams. Holding the skill brings out her motorcycle, letting her do pyro-infused normal charge and plunge attacks, with her charge attacks having a very large AoE. It also increases her movement speed, lets her drive on water, climb walls, and even fly, still making it one of the best exploration abilities in the entire game. Her elemental burst does a massive pyro nuke in a large AoE, capable of reaching insane damage numbers in the right teams. After that, she enters a stronger motorcycle state with even more powerful infused attacks than her skill version, while also gaining full interruption resistance. Her burst doesn't use energy. Instead, Mavuika builds fighting spirit when teammates use normal attacks or consume Night Soul points, which is mainly available to Natlan characters. She needs at least 50% fighting spirit to activate her burst, and it can go up to 100%. The more fighting spirit you build, the stronger her burst damage will be. Her Ascension 1 increases her attack by 30% for 10 seconds when a teammate triggers a Night Soul burst. Her Ascension 4 gives up to 40% bonus damage to the active character, depending on how much fighting spirit Mavuika had when casting her burst. This buff slowly fades over 20 seconds and also works on herself, which makes it great for both her main DPS and sub-DPS playstyles. As for her overworld passive, when you're in Natlan, while sprinting, gliding, climbing, or swimming with another character, switching to Mavuika instantly puts her into motorcycle mode, with 50% Night Soul on her bar. Once her Night Soul runs out, you can hold her skill for even more motorcycle uptime, and after that, she can start using the Natlan Night Soul stamina bar for an even longer duration. Mavuika also reduces the transition cooldown from 10 to 8 seconds, and if you're running another Natlan character, which her kit already encourages you to do, you can sometimes get nearly full movement uptime by swapping between them continuously. As for talent priorities, for her main DPS playstyle, focus mostly on her burst to maximize her nuke and the normal and charge attack scaling inside her burst state, then level her skill for better off-field damage. Her regular normal and charge attacks can be completely ignored. For her sub-DPS playstyle, focus on her skill first to maximize her off-field damage. Then level her burst, since you still want to take advantage of the huge nuke and her Ascension 4 buff. And again, her normal and charge attacks can be ignored. Rotations, this is the part that changed the most since her release. The first thing to master if you want to get the most damage out of her is how to dash cancel her charge attacks, which all of her new combos include. This lets her dish out more hits inside her rotations without hurting the Hydro or Cryo aura when done properly. Before I explain how to do it, I just want to point out that it's not that hard once you practice it a bit, but it is a bit more advanced, and if you play on mobile it can be more challenging. Now if you're more of a super casual player and just don't want to bother with that, then her old combos are still great and very powerful, and you can watch my older Mavuika guide if you want to learn them. But these new combos do add a significant increase to her damage, moving her from the 4th best DPS to being the 2nd best. So if you do want to get the most out of her, it is worth investing a bit of time to practice them. So to dash cancel her charge attack, all you need to do is when Mavuika starts spinning with her charge attack, release the attack button, then quickly hold the attack button again and press dash. To show it again while she is spinning, release the attack button, then quickly hold the attack button and press dash. At the start, it might be a bit hard to do. It did took me a few tries to get the muscle memory, but even with my high ping, I did manage to master it. And you can even do this dash cancel twice in a row for even more hits by just repeating it. Now the final thing you need to learn is that you can also do it right after a finisher. Just before Mavuika lands the big hit, you can hold the attack button and press dash like before. Once you get the hang of it, you can then apply it in her rotations for much more damage. So when it comes to her best rotations, you'd want to start with her skill, then rotate through the team's abilities, especially the ones from Natlan, to collect as much fighting spirit and boost Mavuika's burst damage. For Overload or Mono Pyro teams, where you don't care about reactions, you would want to do as many hits as possible. So when swapping to Mavuika, use her burst for a massive nuke, then right before the strike, already start holding the attack button to make her start her first charge attack. This makes the first charge attack start much sooner. Then dash cancel the charge attack twice and do 2 charge attacks into a finisher, then dash cancel the finisher and repeat 2 more times. If you play a melt or vape team, make sure there is enough cryo or hydro application, so the aura on the enemy won't change to pyro, and Mavuika can keep triggering strong reactions with her hits like melt or vaporize, as losing these reactions on Mavuika will have a massive impact on the team's damage. Since the cryo aura is harder to keep on the enemy, you can play double cryo or use a character like Citlali who can keep up the aura by herself but only with the right rotation. For this rotation, don't use Bennett's skill, as it will just inflict too much pyro and break the aura. I don't see anyone talk about it, but it really makes a difference. Use Citlali's abilities right before switching to Mavuika to make sure there is cryo on the enemy. Then on Mavuika, use her burst to melt her massive nuke. In this case, just wait a moment before starting her first charge attacks to not hurt the cryo aura. Then do 3 charge attacks into a finisher, dash cancel the finisher into another finisher, and repeat 2 more times. Be aware that you might miss the melt on the nuke when playing with high ping, or if you miss the timing, but you should get it most of the time. You can also use Citlali's normal attacks right after her burst to make sure there is cryo aura on the enemy. For vaporized teams or double cryo with Rosaria or Escoffier, which is considered the best Mavuika team right now, after you nuke with her burst, start the charge attack and immediately dash cancel it into a finisher. Then dash cancel the finisher followed by 2 charge attacks into a finisher and repeat 1 more time. These combos can be pretty challenging, and for me, they are Mavuika's biggest downside. Even if you do manage to get everything right, you might still lose the aura, and with that, a lot of damage. This makes me consider her a very hard character to play, especially compared to the recent Nodcry DPS characters, which are basically plug and play and give competitive if not even better damage than her. But since I know there are players who like the challenge or don't mind it, the reward is worth it.
When your faith is
her signature weapon, 1000 Blazing Suns, is still her best in slot, giving very high base attack and 11% crit rate. Its effect gives 20% crit damage and 28% attack for 6 seconds after casting her skill or burst. And when she deals elemental damage with her normal or charge attacks, the duration is extended to 12 seconds total. On top of that, when the wielder is in the Night Soul's Blessing state, which is the Natlan character state where they drain Night Soul points, the crit damage and attack buff will increase by 75%. For Mavuika, it's after she uses her skill or burst, increasing the buff to 35% crit damage and 49% attack, which is crazy strong. In addition to all that, when the wielder is off-field, the buff timer will pause, so it will remain until you switch back to them again. This weapon gives so many stats while also being extremely easy to enable, making it an incredibly strong option for any Claymore DPS or Sub-DPS, and marking it as the best Claymore in the game. Other great alternatives are any offensive crit or attack Claymore you have, especially ones that give buffs to crit, attack percent, skill damage, burst damage, or normal and charge attack damage in their effects. For free to play, Mailed Flower, Tidal Shadow, and Earthshaker are all great options as well. Artifacts, the 4-piece Obsidian Codex is still her best option for both main DPS and sub-DPS playstyles. It gives a 15% damage buff and a massive 40% crit rate, and only requires the holder to be in the Night Soul's Blessing state, which she will always be in during combat. But for sub-DPS, you will usually want another Natlan character on the team to hold the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City set, which is still one of the strongest support sets in the game. But if you don't have another Natlan character to hold Cinder City, then it would be better to put it on Mavuika instead of Codex. Both of those sets are in the same domain and are very resin efficient to farm, so there's really no reason to go for any other sets on her. For the main stats, on the Sands go with attack percent or elemental mastery, while attack percent is the safer general option. EM can be better in melt or vape teams if you already have a lot of attack buffs. On the Goblet, go with pyro damage bonus or attack percent, and for the Circlet, go with crit rate or crit damage for a good ratio. But if you use her signature weapon or another crit rate weapon, together with Obsidian Codex, you will usually want a crit damage Circlet to avoid overcapping on crit rate. For substats, focus on crit rate and crit damage, then attack percent and flat attack, and some EM can be great. You can completely ignore energy recharge, given that she doesn't use it in her kit. When building choosing her best teams, you would first want to pair her with other Natlan characters to fuel her burst. Not having any Natlan teammate can seriously hurt her main DPS playstyle, as she won't build enough fighting spirit for her burst, and you also won't have anyone to hold the Cinder City set, which will hurt her damage significantly in her DPS playstyle. Her best team would be Melt, where you melt her massive nuke, letting you reach more than 1,000,000 damage, which is just crazy, and then keep melting her strong charge attacks. For this team, Citlali will be her dedicated support, giving Pyro Rest Shred, generating fighting spirit for Mavuika, holding the Cinder City set and giving a shield. Citlali also applies so much cryo, to the point where you can run her as the only cryo character on the team and slot in even more buffers, rather than needing a cryo sub-DPS just to keep up with the application. That said, with her best new combos, you do want another cryo character on the team. Escoffier would be the strongest option, as even though her kit is more oriented toward freeze teams, her big damage and great application, which allow more melt triggers in the rotation, do actually make it worth it and more powerful overall. Rosaria can also be a great alternative if you don't have one of the 5-star cryo supports I mentioned. For the last slot, you have a few great options. You can use Bennett, who gives a massive attack buff with his burst, the Noblesse set, and Pyro Resonance. Or you can use Iansan, who is pretty much similar to Bennett, giving a massive attack buff, but is more oriented toward Natlan characters who are all about movement during their attacks, rather than being locked in place by Bennett's circle. She also gives some fighting spirit for Mavuika as well. And last but not least, Xilonen, who gives Rest Shred and has the fastest fighting spirit generation for Mavuika. All are extremely competitive in this last slot, but if you have Iansan at C6, she provides the best damage to the team. The older and more casual melt teams with just Citlali as the cryo character are still extremely strong. There you would usually want Bennett on the team, and can go for either Iansan or Xilonen as the last slot. Like I said, if you have Iansan Constellations, she can be the better option, but Xilonen is more comfortable, with longer uptime on her buffs, no movement requirement during combat, and no interference with the reactions. The only downside of these teams are that it's harder to keep up the cryo aura, and will demand tighter rotations that may sometimes not work perfectly, even if you time everything right, especially if you have high ping. Her Vaporized team is probably her next best team, using a Hydro character instead of Citlali. Keeping up the Hydro aura on the enemy is usually easier to maintain, where even an okay Hydro applicator will be enough. This makes Furina the best fit here, with her massive damage buff to Mavuika, as well as having 2 healers on the team to maximize Furina's fanfare. You can also use other great Hydro sub-DPS characters like Yellen and Xingqiu. Even though her playstyle does prefer using charge attacks, she can still do great damage using her normals, which also adds to her great flexibility. These Vape teams might not always reach the same ceiling as her best melt teams, and you still need to keep an eye on the aura with your rotations, but it is easier to play overall. Her third best team would be Overload, with Chevreuse as the main support. If you don't have Chevreuse, it is not really worth playing Overload for Mavuika, or really any carry. For the next slot, you would need an off-field Electro Applier to keep triggering the Overload reaction. The best one would be Auroron, holding the Cinder City set and providing fighting spirit for Mavuika. Someone like Fischl will provide more electro damage and even better application, but it would be harder for Mavuika to get enough fighting spirit for her burst. In the last slot, you can run Bennett, but you might find it harder to have enough energy for Auroron. So I do find Iansan the better choice here for more electro energy, as well as more fighting spirit for Mavuika. This team might have the lower damage ceiling compared to the other teams, but it does not require Mavuika to be the one triggering the reactions, so there is no elemental aura to manage, making this team the easiest one to play, and as a result, providing much more reliable damage output that in practice can sometimes compete very closely with the other reaction teams. When it comes to characters who do not work with her, most Animo buffers like Sucrose, Kazuha and Prune, who on paper look like they have great synergy, in practice can completely destroy the rotation if they swirl Pyro with their burst, and require even tighter rotations on top of how tight the rotations already are. Another example that really shows Mavuika's place in the meta is someone like Nicole, who Hoyo designed specifically not to work with Mavuika to keep her more balanced, with her 3-second restriction on her attack buff. As for her sub-DPS playstyle, even after the release of Durin, Mavuika is still one of the best Pyro sub-DPS characters in the game, and is very competitive with him. She works especially well with Natlan carries like Moalani, Kinich, Chaska and Varesa, who benefit from their teammates triggering Night Soul Burst, while also fueling Mavuika's fighting spirit for some very nice synergy. But she can also be amazing for many other carries who want Pyro on the team, and the fact that she can double as both an insanely strong DPS and a very competitive sub-DPS to Durin all in one character adds a ton to her pull value compared to him outside of Hexerai DPS characters. Now let's quickly break down her constellations to see if they're worth investing in compared to her signature. C1 gives Mavuika a 40% attack buff and makes her less reliant on Natlan characters to fuel her burst, which is a very nice quality of life upgrade that makes her team building more flexible. C2 gives Mavuika 200 base attack and decreases the opponent's defense by 20%, while also significantly increasing her attacks inside her burst, making her much stronger. C3 increases her burst level, giving her a stronger nuke and better scaling on her infused normal and charge attacks during her burst state. C4 removes the decay from her Ascension 4 passive buff and improves it to give a 50% damage buff instead of 40%, making her buffing much stronger in her Sub-DPS playstyle. C5 increases her skill level, which is also mainly useful for stronger Sub-DPS damage. And C6 upgrades both her skill press and hold. The press adds a 200% attack AoE Pyro hit, while the hold gives 20% defense shred and deals 500% attack AoE Pyro damage every 3 seconds, plus 80 Night Soul points restore for better exploration uptime. Mavuika is already the number 2 strongest DPS in the game, and an amazing sub-DPS, all at C0. But if you want to invest in her, C1 and especially C2 are amazing early constellations that make her even more insane. If you're not planning to go all the way to C2, her weapon is still one of the best offensive claymores in the game, and works amazingly on other claymore DPS characters too. So it mostly comes down to the 4 stars and the other weapon on the banner. If you're also going for low end, getting his weapon if you lose can still be great, but if not, constellations might be better, especially if you also need the 4-star constellations. Even more than a year later, Mavuika is still one of the strongest main DPS characters, one of the best Pyro sub-DPS options, and has the best exploration abilities in the game. Her main limitations are needing Natlan characters to fuel her burst, and having more demanding gameplay to reach her highest numbers. Back when she released, that felt like a fair trade for this amount of damage. But nowadays, with the Nodcry DPS characters doing similar damage with much less effort, it is a bit harder to justify, and I do worry about what's coming in Snezhnaya. That said, Mavuika is still a top meta DPS, who is the least dependent on her dedicated support. I would still recommend getting Citlali for her, but you can manage without her, unlike characters like Skirk and the Nodcry carries, who are usually locked to one specific team, while Mavuika has 3 very strong ones. So in terms of pull value, Mavuika still brings incredible value to almost any account, and if you enjoy a more demanding playstyle that keeps you engaged and rewards good execution, she is still one of the most valuable characters you can pull. She is still either the best or almost the best at everything she does, and I really hope Snezhnaya keeps giving her enough synergy to stay relevant for even longer.
And that's a wrap! If this video helped you in any way, consider giving it a like and subscribe for more Field the Guides. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!